Why does almost everything in your kitchen make you sick if you eat too much of it? It's not just you, it's a 10,000-year mismatch between what your body expects and what your plate actually contains. Here's the twist almost nobody expects. Ancient humans weren't eating bland survival rations while waiting for modern food science to save them. In several measurable ways, they were eating better than you are right now. And the food itself is part of why your body struggles with what's currently on the shelf. In 1985, a physician named S. Boyd Eaton and an anthropologist named Melvin Konner published a paper that shook nutrition science. They reconstructed the actual nutrient profile of a typical paleolithic diet using fossil and ethnographic evidence and compared it directly to the modern American diet. The differences weren't small. Ancestral diets delivered roughly double the fiber, a much wider range of micronutrients, and a dramatically lower ratio of processed sugar and refined starch, while still hitting solid protein targets from wild game and foraged plants. That comparison is the whole video in one sentence, but here's the part you can actually use. Your body didn't evolve preferences at random. It evolved a very specific reward system tuned to a very specific food environment. And that system is still running exactly as designed, just aimed at a completely different set of foods now. A biologist named Daniel Lieberman calls this an evolutionary mismatch, the same concept that explains a dozen other things this channel has covered. Your taste for salt, fat, and sugar was calibrated in an environment where those three things were rare and valuable. Salt meant you weren't dehydrated. Fat meant a dense, hard-won calorie source. Sugar meant ripe, safe-to-eat fruit. Finding any of them used to require real effort. None of that effort exists anymore. The reward system stayed identical. The environment around it didn't. This is where the too healthy part actually comes in. And it's more literal than it sounds. Ancestral foods were nutrient-dense but calorie-moderate, meaning your ancestors had to eat a genuinely wide variety of plants, tubers, nuts, and lean game to hit their energy needs for the day. That variety forced in dozens of different micronutrients and plant compounds almost automatically, just from the sheer range of foods required to feel full. Modern processed food inverted that completely. It's calorie-dense and nutrient-thin, engineered specifically to deliver maximum reward per bite using the exact 3 ancestral trigger flavors: salt, fat, sugar, stacked together in combinations that essentially never occurred in nature. A wild berry doesn't come pre-salted. A root vegetable doesn't come deep fried. Your ancestors' reward system never had to resist that combination because it never existed for them to resist. Here's the part worth actually doing something with. You don't need a Paleolithic diet plan to use this. You need the underlying principle. Diversity of whole foods was the mechanism that made ancestral eating work, not any single ingredient being magic. A modern plate that includes a wide range of colors, textures, and plant sources is quietly recreating the same nutrient density strategy your ancestors were forced into by necessity, minus the starvation risk. There's a second piece anthropologists keep finding across very different, unrelated cultures. A dentist named Weston Price traveled the world in the 1930s documenting traditional diets in isolated communities that hadn't yet adopted Western processed food. Across wildly different environments, from Arctic fishing villages to African herding communities, he found strikingly similar patterns: strong bone structure, minimal tooth decay, and low rates of the chronic disease that was already becoming common back home. When those same communities later adopted more processed, Western-style diets, the same problems Price had studied for years began appearing within a single generation. Not centuries, one generation. That speed matters because it tells you this isn't really about ancient versus modern as a moral story. It's about how fast your environment can outrun what your biology can quietly compensate for. A reward system tuned over hundreds of thousands of years cannot recalibrate itself in 20 or 30 years, no matter how much processed food surrounds it. So, the actionable version of all this isn't eat like a caveman. It's simpler than that. Your cravings for salt, fat, and sugar aren't malfunctioning. They're doing exactly what they were built to do, just responding to a food supply your ancestors' bodies never had to filter against. Recreating variety, the same mechanism that made ancestral diets accidentally nutrient dense, is the lever you actually have access to today. Not nostalgia for a diet you can't fully reconstruct anyway. Why does almost everything in your kitchen make you sick if you eat too much of it? Now you know it's not a flaw in you. It's a reward system still doing its job in a world that stopped playing by the old rules a very short time ago.